All right, Kyle Madson, Chris Biderman. We've got both the hosts of Candlestick Chronicles with us here today.
Let's go.
What's up, boys?
Snapback guys. Big snapback guys.
Oh, I love this. I love this. Kyle, what's up, man? Hey, just confusion that Tristan made. We are live on the radio, just in case anyone's.
Oh, I thought you guys were taking the day off.
It was very much alive, a very much alive radio program.
We are,
man.
Now, look, I gotta ask. We talking Niners for sure.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're gonna ask.
We got
punching Jordan Poole in the face.
Kyle, I've been calling Draymond a fraud for I don't know how long. He is a fraud. This is his true colors. This is what he is. He's not a leader. He's the leader of this team. Stop it. He ain't never been the leader of this team. He's not a leader. Your thoughts on Draymond Green?
He's a millennial that punched the Gen Z kid in the face. I mean, who among us, right? No, it's definitely, this is a terrible look for Draymond, and it makes it super hard as somebody as somebody who has always been Team Draymond, even back to Michigan State. Loved Draymond for a really long time. This is impossible to defend. There's no defending what he did. I don't care what Jordan Poole did or what he said. There's no justifying hauling off and punching your teammate in the face the way Draymond did. And this just makes me rethink just everything I thought about him as a teammate and as a I don't want to say it's a key piece of their run, but it's just like, man, it's really like if I had a Draymond jersey, I don't, but if I did, it'd be like hard to wear it. Like, yeah, it's just bad.
Yeah. The thing for me, it's like you would have thought, given the way the 2016 finals went, like, okay, that could be a learning experience for Draymond. Maybe he'll be better from that. And then the Kevin Durant thing happens in 2018, and you're like, all right, you kind of live as a Warriors fan, maybe to like walk that line with Draymond because his intensity is so important to the defense and all that stuff. Like the Dennis Rodman thing, maybe that's who Draymond is. And you're like, all right, maybe he'll learn from that and mature from that. And it's just not happening, right? Like it's not just like a guy acting up. It's like these are serious franchise altering events that have substantial repercussions, like potentially costing your team a title in 2016 or costing your team a chance to extend the run with Kevin Durant. Like I think everybody assumes Kevin Durant was out the door, and maybe he was, but Draymond Green's handling of the Durant situation certainly didn't help or make it more likely that Durant was wanting to come back to Golden State. And now you have this after the Warriors win a championship. It feels like the season is very much in peril before it's even started. So like, I think, I don't want to say like, I think Draymond's been a super important player to the Warriors, and just, they wouldn't have won all those titles without their defense. And he's been very clearly their most important defensive player. But like at some point you gotta, enough's going to be enough, right? Like you're trying to transition from the old guard to these new guys. And like, if Draymond's going to be what he was for the majority of the playoffs last year, which is a guy who's sometimes causing more harm than doing good, then you really have to think about this transition period as you do move on to Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga and James Wiseman potentially. Like, is he going to be a positive influence on those guys, or are these negative events going to keep occurring now that his skill set is dropping off? He's going to be really expensive. They are facing ridiculous luxury tax bills. Like there are all these things you have to factor in now. And it just seems like, you would think from all these other past incidents, like, no, he'll learn from this and grow. And it just hasn't happened.
Let's shift our attention to the San Francisco 49ers here, as we've got Chris Biderman, sneaky Kings reporter, Kyle Madson, Golden State Warriors reporter, but they're also the host of Candlestick Chronicles, available wherever you get podcasts from. We had fun with this at Cooperage Brewing Company, and boy, has it manifested itself beautifully weeks later. How long before Ufunga becomes the most popular 49er? Is he already?
Right now, in this very moment, he might be. Yeah, he might be. There's like there's no controversy. There's no like There's no pitting him against one another. Like Jaquiski Tartt's gone. Like there isn't a Jaquiski Tartt, Talanoa Hufanga debate going on. And when you make really a game sealing, maybe a game saving play like he did against the Rams, you're kind of unimpeachable at that point.
Also, fans love players with long hair. If you have long hair, you're automatically like a little bit better in fans' eyes, especially when it comes to football players. When they wear a helmet, they got the hair banging out the back. There's the Troy Polamalu comps. There's the style that he plays with. He's super electric and super likable. So, if he's not there yet, I think he's headed there. And if he has like an all-pro type of season, I bet you see a lot of number 29 jerseys around Levi's.
Yeah, no, he's super fun to watch, man. Super fun to watch. And I know I saw him in the game against Chicago to start the season and how phenomenal he looked there. And I was just still a little apprehensive. I was like, I keep on hearing people saying he might not be good in coverage. He's playing really, really aggressive. He goes against a better quarterback. They start using that aggression against them and all this other stuff. And I'm just, I don't want to be fooled, right? Because I want to be like, yo, this is the guy they found. This dude, he's gonna be here for the next. He's Polamalu reincarnated. He's gonna be here for the next 10 years. He's not. But, he's gonna be. I want to be excited, but I'm like trying to protect myself. Is it time that I just don't protect my? Is he? He is who he is, right? Hufanga is that dude, right?
I mean, I think if you look at just how good the surroundings are for him, just like he's on a really good defense and he's willing to he's able to take chances because there's so many good players doing their jobs around him, that I feel like it would be different if he were on a bad defense and like the only guy responsible for making plays. Like, there's going to be a good pass rush a lot of the time, right? He's playing alongside or behind arguably the best linebacking core in football. The Niners corners are solid. Like their other safety spot is solid. So he's in a situation where he can just thrive and just make plays and play free because he doesn't have to compensate for other guys who aren't doing their job. So that's to me, like why I think on top of like his talent and the way he prepares and everything like that, that to me is a huge factor in this because he can just do his thing because the Niners defense is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing too, the big question with him out of USC was his athleticism. Like, how would that translate in the NFL? He was always around the football at SC. He was a Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He was generating turnovers. It's like, man, that guy's just a player. Like, I think we talked about it on the podcast when he got drafted. It's like, this guy's just going to be an awesome special teamer for like 10 years, like minimum.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go and you see him as like one of the fastest ball carriers in the NFL on his pick six, and it's like, oh, he can move a little bit. Like Chris is just saying. Any functional athleticism that he does lack, he's not required to do those things in this defense. So I'm out of questions about Talanoa Hufanga as a player. I think he's really, really good. And he's got that dog in him, which is very important.
You see the X-ray. He got the dog all in the X-ray.
For those listening on 1320 AM, 98.5 FM, for those listening on the Odyssey app, the 95.7 The Game has again shoved Kyle into a closet to do his radio hit here with us, along with Chris Biderman. Kyle, I'll start with you on this one. What's your assessment? I've had trouble making sense of that game against the Rams. The fact that Sean McVay just can't beat him in the regular season. Had to sweat out the NFC Championship, but got it done. Credit to him for winning the one that matters the most. And still looking at this, man, this is a tremendous defensive team. I didn't think Jimmy Garoppolo was good. I didn't think he was bad. I thought Jimmy was fine. Like I thought he was fine. I didn't know what to think about the 49ers walking away from that game.
Yeah.
Except their defense is really, really good. That was the one thing that was obvious.
Yeah, the thing for me was I don't think that was the ceiling for their offense. Their offense was better than it was the Sunday previous, which means I think they're trending the right direction. And they still have that game in their bag. Like they can still generate enough offense on a day where their defense is just going to be lights out, which I think is going to be more days than not this year. So the question going into Monday was, man, can they get to 20 points? Like, can this offense score 20? So they get a couple of touchdowns, they get a defensive touchdown. And I think that that Sunday night in Denver was like rock bottom for the offense. I don't think that's their floor. I think Garoppolo talks about getting in a rhythm. I think Kyle Shanahan's starting to try to figure some things out. I think he had gotten figured out a little bit. So I think that what we saw Monday was the new like baseline for their offense, and I think we'll start to see them get a little better. They'll have a bad game here and there, but for the most part, I think what we saw on Monday was the kind of team this is going to be.
Yeah, for me, I think it's turnovers, right? Like it's pretty clear through their first 4 games, when they've turned the ball over, they've lost, and when they haven't turned the ball over, they've won. And like, there's not a huge difference between, Jimmy Garoppolo in, I mean, Denver was kind of a unique case, but like a typical game and what Jimmy Garoppolo did on Monday night, there's not a whole lot of difference there, aside from like those couple throws that do end up getting intercepted, right? And even like the Deebo Samuel touchdown pass, I'm not convinced he threw that high on purpose, right? And if it's on target and hits Deebo in the chest, it might be a pick six the other way. So I'm with you, Damien, in that like I'm not coming out of that game super encouraged by what the 49ers did offensively, because there's a chance they might have gotten pretty lucky and that could have been a 14-point swing the other direction. So to me, it's about turnovers, because I think there's a baseline of the offense, given the talent you have, given Kyle Shanahan's play calling, that if you don't make mistakes and you avoid self-inflicted wounds, then you're probably going to be competitive in all these games because your defense is so good, right? But it becomes a lot harder to win when you're giving the ball away. And so to me, that's really the biggest thing, because they don't have the luxury of like having a great offensive line right now, particularly with Trent Williams out, to be like, all right, we're just going to run the ball 40 times and that's how we're going to win. Like, they can't control the line of scrimmage in the same way that they could. So they are going to have to pass. And that means more risky throws for Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's still, as long as Jimmy Garoppolo, unless he like starts to play dramatically better, which he might, he's typically played his best football in November and December. But like, unless you see a dramatic difference from him, I think you're kind of teetering in a precarious scenario with the offense, because he is so prone to making those game-changing interceptions.
I think that's just Jimmy. Like, that's just what it is. Is there a better version of Jimmy? Yeah, but he's also liable to throw a pick six in a big spot.
Right.
That's why the Niners are trying to move on.
But is there a better version of Jimmy?
Nope. Like from what we saw, I mean, he's not a 59% completion rate guy. I thought he missed a couple of throws that he normally makes on Monday, but not substantially better. Not like Pro Bowl caliber quarterback on a consistent basis.
But he's about that, like what we saw on Monday. He's about that. That's why I always say he's about an average quarterback. And that's also why I was so frustrated the week before in Denver, because I thought that was the worst game I'd ever seen him play before, as far as the turnovers and the missed throws and things of that nature. But the pattern, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I kind of see it. The pattern usually goes with Jimmy Garoppolo. He'll give you about 5 or 6 straight games like he played on Monday, and then he'll have a horrible game that brings everything into question. And then he goes back to having about 3 or 4 more games like he had on Monday night. If he plays that way, and I'm with you, Chris, I think the biggest thing is the turnover aspect of it all. But if he plays the way he played on Monday and runs that offense the way he did, combined with the defense that it seems like they have, is that enough for them to get back to where they were last year in the NFC Championship game and beyond?
I think so, because, I mean, the defense is better than last year, like very clearly better. And they did win 2 road playoff games with Jimmy Garoppolo compromised with the shoulder injury, which he says was far more significant than the thumb injury. So if they can keep Garoppolo upright and keep him healthy, then I think the team should be better than it was last year. But, the injuries have been sort of piling up quietly, or not so quietly in some cases, really throughout, like since late August, like when Jimmy Ward went down and Elijah Mitchell went down and Trent Williams went down. Like, these are all really important players, and they obviously they're not going to be, Eric Armstead might go on IR. like they're not going to be nearly as good if they're just missing all of their best players at various portions of the season, right? George Kittle missed the first 2 games of the year, and he's perpetually dealing with injuries. So like, I think the ceiling is higher for the 49ers overall than last year because the defense is substantially better. And the idea of keeping Jimmy Garoppolo healthy with these weapons, like you should be able to put enough together offensively to get there. But there are some substantial questions, right? Like, can you keep Jimmy Garoppolo healthy? Is he, it's hard to say he's less injury prone after an offseason where he had significant shoulder surgery. So I think they absolutely can get to where they were last year and potentially be better. But there are just as many questions, really, as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is your quarterback.
Chris Biderman and Kyle Madson with us here on ESPN 1320. Kyle, what is going on with George Kittle?
I thought you were going to ask what was going on with my microphone. Hopefully it sounds better now.
It sounds way better.
Oh, thank God. You guys just got to let me know.
Yeah, normally we do between Trista cussing and your microphone. We're like, it's Friday. We're just gonna let it ride. Just let it ride. You sound like $1 million now, though. That's
great. What was your question? George Kittle. What about him?
George Kittle's play was much like your microphone was a few moments ago. Why does it like it doesn't feel like George Kittle's involved in the offense? And I don't want to criticize George Kittle's like play. I don't feel like he's involved in the offense. Why not?
His production.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just grinding the all 22 the other night.
Nice.
And I had a theory that maybe he didn't play much in the preseason, and then he's hurt for the first 2 games. So my thought was, okay, maybe he's still just kind of getting back into game shape, and they're not going to fire 10 targets a game at him right away when he's still kind of working his way into playing shape. So I think that's part of it, but I also think that part of this evolution that I think Kyle Shanahan's kind of going through is figuring out how to utilize George Kittle against defenses, because he knows how defenses want to defend him. And so there were several times the other night where Kittle's out and he's in a route, but he's like peeling out to the boundary, not even looking for the ball, just taking defenders with him as Juwan Jennings makes a 3rd down catch. And then the second Juwan Jennings 3rd down catch, Kittle ran like the same route, but underneath it, and the linebacker goes with him and it leaves Jennings open. So I think that's part of it. There was another one where he was open on a deep shot and Garoppolo pressure just got to him and he ended up running for a 1st down. So I think that it's kind of a combination of things, but I don't think it's like, oh, George Kittle's bad now. I think we'll see his production kind of start to tick up here as the season goes on, as he gets healthier and as Kyle Shanahan makes whatever adjustments that he's making.
Yeah, and I think there's an element too of like Kyle Shanahan really emphasizing Jimmy Garoppolo getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And when you have George Kittle, maybe he's using him as a decoy to a certain extent to like, hey, maybe pull this guy this way so we can get the ball to Jennings, within 2 seconds of snapping the ball, like those types of things. Because the issue when you're trying to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands as quickly as possible to avoid pressure, it's not like you're going through 3 or 4 progressions, right? Mm-hmm. So like if George Kittle's coming back and like the whole point of the game plan is to get the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands as fast as possible, and you really like matchups you can get with Deebo Samuel or Juwan Jennings on 3rd down in particular, then it's like, all right, George Kittle might not get the 10, 12 targets we've seen him get previously. But I do think like as the season goes on, as George Kittle rounds back into game shape, and gets more acclimated just to the season in general, I think his production is going to tick up for sure.
Real quick before we get you guys out of here, Niners first 4 weeks of the season should have took care of the Bears game, probably should have took care of the Broncos game, whatever. They did take care of Seattle, handled the Rams. It's been up and down. A lot of things have gone on in just the first 4 weeks. Now they're going on a short week, cross country to Carolina. I understand all that. Carolina is preparing for their coach to get fired. Baker Mayfield looks like a train wreck. They can't keep anybody off the quarterback as well. Come on, guys. The Niners, especially with the defense they have, they should establish themselves early on the defensive end. And I'll put it to you like this. If they do lose the game against Carolina, it should be because of turnovers and bad offense. This defense needs to establish, like, yeah, this is another team that's not going to score 20 on us. This shouldn't happen, right?
Yeah, Carolina stinks. They're not good. And I think you're right, Kenny. That's the short of it. If the 49ers don't turn the ball over, they should win comfortably. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've typically been, they're doing this thing where they stay on the East Coast, and they've typically been good when they do that. And so, but the issue has been they've struggled coming back from those East Coast trips, right? Like in 2019, they had those big games. They played pretty well in Baltimore. They obviously played, but lost, and then they played really well in New Orleans. Came back and lost next week to the Falcons, right? Like a non-playoff team. What's interesting about this time is they have Carolina to stay in the Greenbrier in West Virginia, a game in Atlanta, and then they come back to play the Chiefs. So like they know that game coming back is going to be especially difficult because of the circumstances, but now also because it's like one of the best teams in the league. And it's going to be important for them to rack up these 2 wins just so they can insulate themselves from a loss to the Chiefs not being like catastrophic, right? Because if they if they go 0-2 and then have to come back, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but just say if they were to go 0-2 and then come back and play the Chiefs, like it would potentially be like the dagger in their season, right? So like these next 2 games are super important because you have a stretch coming up starting with the Chiefs where you're playing a lot of good teams. And you need to get these wins when they're available to you. And that's ultimately like the biggest regret of the first month of the season is that like, man, the Bears stink, the Broncos stink, and they needed to win those games and didn't. So now they don't have the same margin for error, which is similar to last year when they started 3-5, which I guess should be encouraging for Niners fans. Like they can potentially bounce back and get rolling.
It's not off the table. Also, I feel the need to say this. It's not off the table that the Niners might just not be very good. I mean, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is just kind of what he was in Denver and against LA. And yeah, they're going to win some games because of their defense, but that ceiling that we saw them reach last year after they started 3-5 and they really went on that tear at the end of the year, maybe that ceiling is just not there anymore. Like that's definitely on the table.
Well, good thing I never doubted a guy like Jeff Wilson because he's been really good for the 49ers the last couple of weeks for sure. Chris Biderman, Kyle Madson, host of Candlestick Chronicles. Subscribe, rate, and review. That's tattooed on Kyle's arm. Check out the podcast for 49ers coverage. Oh, chest. Sorry, it's tattooed on his chest. Subscribe, rate, and review Candlestick Chronicles.
Right above Thug Life.
Right above it. Yeah, right.